Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that some stories and discussions in this episode of Radiant Resilience may touch on sensitive and potentially triggering topics. These may include themes of emotional and psychological abuse, narcissistic personality disorder, gaslighting, divorce and trauma, and financial control and manipulation. Our goal is to share real life experiences in a respectful and empathetic manner, offering insights into the complexities of the human spirit and the journey towards resilience. However, we understand that some content might be difficult for listeners. We encourage you to prioritize your well being and discretion when deciding to listen. Please remember this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice or support. If you find yourself needing assistance, we urge you to seek help from qualified professionals or trusted support systems. Your mental and emotional health is important to us. Thank you for your courage and for joining us in a space of understanding and compassion. Welcome back, everyone, to Radiant Resilience. I'm very excited for this conversation today. I think that we're going to learn a lot of things. I have with me Mia Hanks. Mia is a survivor of narcissistic abuse. She was married to a covert narcissist for 29 years, and in 2024, she wrote an award-winning memoir titled Bride Maid. She's hoping that her story will help raise awareness about narcissism and help other victims find their voices. Welcome, Mia. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. I'm really excited for this conversation. I think narcissism, I feel like, has become a little bit of a trendy term. Would you agree with that?
Definitely. And it's very overused. And most of the time, I think when we're referring to somebody as a narcissist, they aren't a narcissist. It's more, we want to call anybody who is overconfident or very pompous, we want to call them a narcissist. But in fact, that's not what narcissism is. So very overused and used incorrectly most of the time, I think.
Yeah, I feel that way too. And I feel like I would love to gain more clarity on what a narcissist is as well. I think we will get into that, but I would love to hear your personal journey and how you got into all this work. And yeah, go right ahead. I'll let you start wherever you feel comfortable.
Yeah. So I got married very young. I was 21 years old. And I had no idea what narcissism was. I had never heard of narcissistic personality disorder. And I just got swept up in this marriage and knew from the early days that something wasn't quite right. But I just wanted to make it work and tended to sweep these little issues under the rug. But the little issues end up being bigger issues later. So yeah, I sat in this marriage for 29 years and just trying to make it work, thinking if I held out long enough, it might get better. But my ex-husband is a covert narcissist.
Mm.
And with narcissism, it does not get better, it only gets worse. Finally, I untangled myself and found my way out after 29 years of being married. And since then, I've just been trying to raise awareness about this. I think there are a lot of victims out there, and I think a lot of people sometimes don't know they're victims. There's still the gaslighting and just the psychological abuse creates such a fog that it's really hard to convince a victim that they are a victim. So I'm just trying to spread awareness about the whole idea of narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder.
What kind of behaviors would you be willing to share? What kind of behaviors he had towards you that would fall into that category?
So, very controlling. Narcissists have to be in control. They're the most important person in the room, always. Everything revolves around them 24/7. This isn't always obvious to people on the outside. In fact, it can be quite the opposite. So, with the covert narcissist, he was humble, kind, generous, so thoughtful. Everyone on the outside thought he was husband of the year, father of the year. But behind closed doors, he's actually controlling, manipulating, abusive. Everything was about him. And so he creates this environment of everyone's walking on eggshell because you don't want to trigger him and you want to make sure he doesn't have a bad day, because if his day's bad, then it must be your fault. So it's an exhausting way to live.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said 29 years? That's so long. What
It was.
what was the tipping point for you? Was there something specific that happened that made you be like, "Oh, now, like I got to get out of this. This is not okay."
I think really that all came into my mind with just my physical health.
Mm,
I was struggling physically in the last couple of years of this marriage. I was suffering from chronic pain, headaches, stomach aches, anxiety attacks almost every day. And it was just that stress, living under in that constant state of fight or flight. I was living under so much stress, it was breaking me down physically. And at some point, I had to realize this is not sustainable and this
yeah.
is not going to change. It's only getting worse. And I've got to make a decision and basically rescue myself.
Yeah. And how did you decide that it was narcissism then? Like, what in your mind? Because you're going through all this, you decide you need out. And how did you recognize it as narcissism?
So I really just started doing research. I would stay up. They always, I guess, a quote that I see a lot on social media says, if you find yourself staying up late into the night researching your partner's behavior, that's the biggest red flag you need.
Oh,
And that's exactly what I was doing. I would stay up late at night and I would just research. And I'm thinking, this can't be like, for so long, I think I lied to myself and just said, this is normal. This is how everyone lives. It's okay. But in those last couple of years, I really started digging in and trying to figure out what's going on. And really, it wasn't probably until after I had made the decision to leave that all the pieces fell into place. And I realized through research that what I was looking at was narcissistic personality disorder. Every box checked. It
mm,
was like someone had been spying on my household. It was everything that was described was my ex-husband to a T. And then I reached out to a therapist and went from there. Yeah, and I was told, based on my description of him, the therapist I was seeing said, this is the most textbook case of NPD that, I've ever seen.
wow. That's crazy. All right. What is a narcissist? Let's start there.
So basically, I think most people would recognize the traits of somebody who is very arrogant, but again, that doesn't always show. But somebody who they really have no empathy. I think that's one of the best ways to
Mhm.
describe a true narcissist, not just someone who's arrogant, but they cannot self-reflect. They cannot put themselves in other people's shoes. And they just don't, there's just like a void there. They cannot understand how what they do might affect somebody else, nor do they care. There's almost a numbness in their personality, just this numbness where there's a point at which they don't care anymore. So they tend to think everyone is jealous of them. A lot
Hmm.
of them tend to be a bit paranoid. They think everybody wants what they have. And just everything has to revolve around them. It's all about how they feel and how they interpret the situation. And so life with a narcissist becomes 100% about them and 0% about you.
So is the victim mentality for them really common?
Very much.
Okay.
They love to be the victim in every
Mhm.
story. Either it swings one extreme to the other. They're either the greatest person that ever lived, or they're just this incredibly victimized person. Either way, they're getting a lot of attention. So they will use the victim mentality if they think they're not getting enough attention. Because everything, like I say, everything has to revolve around them, no matter what they have to do to make that happen.
Do they tend to be people that seek out drama?
I don't know. That's a
Hmm.
good question, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't know.
But only if it's drama that makes them look good. If they
Ah,
can be the hero in the story or serves them, then yes. But everything that's their mentality is everything needs to serve them in some way or another. And if it doesn't, then they're not interested.
yeah, I was just thinking of the victim mentality. If they seek out the drama so that they constantly look like the victim, and I don't know. I didn't know if that was a common thing with narcissists or not.
Yeah, it's interesting. It could be. I don't know. I think, like I say, I think it's more about if they can be the hero or the victim in the story, then
Okay.
yeah, that might serve them.
So, how does one become a narcissist? Because I feel like I've heard that people are not born narcissists. They become narcissists from their childhood. Is that true?
I think that's true. Yeah. And, what in my research, what I've found, and it seems to certainly be the case with my ex-husband, these people often have have some neglect in their childhood. They neglect. And
Mm,
usually that is emotional neglect where their emotional needs have not been met as a child. And somehow or another, the narcissistic traits come in as a means to protect themselves.
okay.
Because really, narcissists at their core, they're not confident people. They have a lot of self-confident issues. But yeah, and most of them, I believe, have a history of not having their emotional needs met as a child.
Okay. So it's not necessarily trauma specifically. I guess neglect is trauma
Yeah,
in it.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But it's that more so than a traumatic event that happened or
Yeah, that's my understanding. I do
okay.
say they all have trauma in their past, but I think it's more of an ongoing trauma like a neglect or something,
Okay.
not just like one specific incident. And
And
that kind of makes sense. I guess I can understand how that might cause somebody to put up these walls and create this defensive attitude, which somehow becomes narcissism.
and you said it gets worse over time.
Yeah, studies show that it does not get better. They tend to get more and more narcissistic as the years go on. And that's certainly what I saw. And I think some of that is, these people tend to get away with everything. At least that
Mhm.
was my experience. And I think the more they get
Interesting.
away with, the more bold they become.
Well,
And
sure, yeah, because
so,
they can
you
look at
know,
it and be like, I got through that and that worked out fine, so I'm just gonna try this
yeah.
time. Oh
Yeah,
no.
I think that really is one of the reasons that they tend to get worse. They just, the more that this lifestyle is working for them, the more this personality is making them the hero, then the bolder
Mm,
they become.
yeah. That's super interesting. What is the difference between, because I feel like there's a little bit of a crossover with emotionally immature adults, which is also becoming a trendy term.
Yes.
But I feel like there's a lot of, like, if I were to create a Venn diagram, I feel like there are some, from what I've learned, some crossover of emotionally immature and narcissism. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think I would say all narcissists, like actually true narcissists, are emotionally immature.
Okay.
You can't be emotionally mature and not be able to possess empathy. They're not empathetic, therefore they can't be emotionally mature. So, yeah, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, I think I've heard that all narcissists are emotionally immature, but not all emotionally immature people are narcissists.
Yeah, that
So,
that would make sense. Because there's more to narcissism than just being emotionally immature. But that definitely, yeah, I would say that's for sure.
yeah. So, how would you recommend, obviously, if you're in a relationship with somebody, whether it's romantic or a friendship, that is a narcissist, you can walk away from those. But what about not easy? I'm not going to sit here and say that's an easy choice by
Yeah.
any means. But what about like family members that are narcissists? How do you recommend people handle those situations? Because that's hard.
That's really hard. I think that the biggest thing there is to recognize the fact that they are narcissists. And then you know what you're dealing with, and you're not going to be as susceptible to all of their little tactics. It's just more about educating yourself and knowing what you're dealing with and how to protect yourself because the gaslighting and the manipulative games they play. If you're cognizant of it and you are educated in it, I think it makes you less likely to be a victim.
Yeah. So it'd be like putting up more boundaries.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because narcissists don't like boundaries.
Ah.
So if they come across someone who has strong boundaries, they're just going to pass right on by you. They're not probably not going to bother you because that's just not going to work. That's not in their playbook.
Yeah. Do they tend to not have boundaries themselves?
I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of
I
people who get upset when boundaries are put in place by others are usually people who don't have any boundaries themselves.
Yeah, I think they just do whatever works for them in the moment. Maybe they don't have strong boundaries. I had never really considered that. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, yeah, I'm curious about that. Can somebody be a narcissist without knowing it? Or is it true that most narcissists don't think they're narcissists?
Yeah, I don't think a true narcissist, I don't think they would believe they were a narcissist. Some might, but I'd say the majority, their attitude is there's nothing wrong with me, it's all you.
Mm,
Everybody else has the problem. Everybody else is flawed. There's nothing wrong with them, which is why a narcissist often won't apologize. They don't
mm,
apologize. And if they do, it's not genuine because they really don't believe that they've done anything wrong. I think they will acknowledge that they don't, maybe they have mistreated someone. They
okay.
will acknowledge that, but they're not sorry for it because the way they reason it is that person made me do that.
Mm.
That person made me treat them that way. So it always falls onto the victim. It's the victim's fault.
Oh man. That's so they'll do, is that, do they think they're apologizing by doing their version of apologizing if they
I
recognize
don't
it?
think so. I think they just do
Okay.
it maybe sometimes to keep the peace. I don't know. But I never heard a genuine apology from my covert narcissist ex. I don't think that it's really, they just really don't think that they need to apologize.
They fully believe they are the victim.
Yes, yes, always.
What are the different types of narcissists? I know you mentioned your ex-husband was a covert narcissist. So what are some other types of narcissists?
Yeah, I've heard different terms, but overt obviously is the opposite of covert, so where they are really arrogant in public. There's also one called the malignant narcissist, and these are the really, I guess they're also overt and they're just more insidious, more cruel. There are a couple others, I'm not sure, but I think there are about five different types of narcissists. Really, it's just all the same. It's more the different types, I think, is more about how they present in public, but all of them basically have that same, they're not empathetic, the world revolves around them, they have no remorse.
It's all the same behind closed doors,
It's
basically.
all the same, basically.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Interesting. What are some early red flags of being in a relationship with a narcissist?
I would say someone who really makes you question how you feel about yourself.
Oh.
These people they don't want you to feel very good about yourself because they want you to be dependent on them. So, someone who is, like I say, no empathy, pay attention to how they treat other people. Do they seem kind and caring to other people? Can they self reflect? And really, just do you feel like this person is forcing you to be dependent on them? Because that is their goal. That is how they control you. Sometimes it's hard to see. It really is. And
Yeah.
especially if you don't know what to look for, it's very easy to get swept up in this. They start off with this love bombing, making you think that you are the greatest person that ever lived, grand gestures, gifts, all this attention, and you think, how could this be a bad thing? This person is great.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to get swept up if you don't know what you're looking for, what to look out for.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of abusive relationships are like that too. It takes a long time for a lot of people to recognize what's happening and that unless it's like physical abuse, that's usually pretty
Right.
obvious early on. But the emotional abuse is always, it's easy to make excuses for. It's easy
Yes.
to just ignore some of it and be like, oh, it's not that bad. It's okay. And then especially if they're love bombing you, then you're like, oh yeah, then okay, he did this or she did that or whatever. And then you move on and then something else happens. So,
Yeah, it's a cycle. They will control, manipulate, mistreat you as far as they think they can. And then when they think they've pushed you almost to the brink, then they'll come in with the love bombing. And they might buy
oh,
you a nice gift. And then you think, this is really nice. They're being so nice to me. And maybe they were just having a bad week. And so it's this cycle that you get into. And it's hard to break out of that cycle because you end up being in such a fog and you really can't see clearly what's going on when it's happening to you. It's not until you get out and you can
oh yeah.
reflect and look back and say, wow, that was pretty bad. But at the time, And I think there's also we all want to feel like we're living a somewhat normal life.
Yeah.
I would make a lot of excuses and just tell myself, this is okay. It's normal. And you start to normalize this terrible behavior because you don't want to have to admit that things aren't okay.
And presumably you love this person too, right? So
Right.
because you got into that relationship because you love that person. And I think just because bad things happen in our relationships doesn't necessarily mean you don't love that person anymore. You still have those
Right.
feelings there. And so to try to break free from that is really hard too.
Yeah, I experienced a lot of guilt when I was in the process of leaving and thinking, this is just going to upend his life. And oh my goodness, I've ruined his life.
Mhm.
And I would say that to my therapist, I've ruined his life. And she would say, no, he has ruined his life. You are having to leave because he has ruined his life. But I still experienced a lot of guilt. You feel bad. I didn't want to. I didn't want to hurt him as much as he hurt me. I really didn't want
Yeah.
to hurt him. I didn't feel right about that. But in the end, I had to get out. I just could not survive in that environment any longer.
Yeah, that's so hard. It's so hard to walk away from stuff like that. And hindsight is always 2020, which is so annoying.
It is. It is, right. Look back and say, I can't believe I stayed in that for so
Mhm.
long. And I don't think that I really understood how much better things could be on the other side. So, yeah, hindsight is 2020. If I had it to do over again, I would have left years ago.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah, and I think it's so easy to blame ourselves for a lot of those situations, especially in that case, because he was making you feel like he was beating you down and beating you down and
Yes.
beating you down. So, of course, then you sit there and you're like, "Oh, now I'm ruining his life and
Hmm.
dare I?" And it's so much easier. Sometimes I'm very much a people pleaser, and so I find that I don't know, sometimes for me, which this is very wrong thinking, nobody should think this way, but sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe it's just easier for me to be miserable than to make this other person miserable, even though
I
they're making me
abs
miserable.
Absolutely. And that is a trait that narcissists look for, are
Mhm.
people who are people pleasers and more codependent type people who are willing to take on the blame, take on the guilt. So I can totally relate to that. I think that maybe is a function of why I stayed for as long as I did. It's at some point you decide maybe it's just easier this way.
Yeah.
Maybe it's easier to not create drama and
Mm.
to not, because I knew it was going to be this huge dramatic event if I left, and
Yeah.
it just, I don't know if I was ready for that. It seemed very daunting. Yeah.
And any type of breakup and divorce and things like that, I think is extremely traumatizing because you're upending your entire life and what you thought your life was going to be. And that's scary to go into the unknown, and especially after 29 years, that's so long.
Very scary. Yeah, like I say, I was 21 when I got married, so I had really never done life on my own.
Yeah.
So I went straight from college to marriage. So I didn't know. I had never really been on my own. And I think that made it extra scary.
Yeah.
But yeah, I certainly, I look back and I have no regrets about leaving, and it was the best decision I ever made. But it took me a long time to get strong enough to make that decision.
Yeah. May I ask how long you've been out of it?
I've been out, I left about 3 years ago.
Okay.
I've been divorced for a year.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So this is
So
still pretty recent. You
it's pretty fresh. It really is. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm still in the process of just figuring it all out. And it's very interesting because I still don't take for granted when I wake up every day, I can decide what I want to do. And I have nobody controlling me. And the freedom is something that I don't think I will ever take for granted.
I love that. So if somebody is getting out of a narcissistic relationship, what are some first steps for somebody to try to heal from that? What do you recommend?
I really think seeking out therapy is a great first step.
Yep.
Therapy is not going to fix everything. It's not a magic cure. But what it does is it sets you on the right path. It sets you up to begin a
Mhm.
healing journey. Definitely therapy and creating a circle of support. It doesn't have to be a lot of people, just a few people that can hold you accountable and that you are practicing self-care and you're taking care of yourself. And then just really be patient with yourself
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
healing could take years. Maybe we never fully heal. Maybe it's something that we work on for the rest of our lives. But
Mm.
don't have such high expectations on the healing. Give yourself time and
Yeah.
be patient and relish in those small victories.
Yeah. Yeah. Do the narcissistic people try to come back? Or has he tried to come back on you with,
Yeah,
hey, take me back,
initially.
take me back?
Yeah, initially he
Mhm.
did right after I left. And he, of course, making promises. I'm going to be so great and everything's going to be so great. And these people are convincing. And I do
Mhm.
remember having a discussion with my therapist about this. And she told me, she said, if you go back, it will be 10 times worse.
Wow.
And I thought, I think she's right. She said, it'll probably be good for a couple of weeks and then it's going to get worse. And really, what happens is when you go back, they've won. You've let them
Mhm.
win. And they say for domestic abuse, it takes an average of 7 times to actually leave. I think with a narcissist, if you go back once, you're probably not going to get out again. Uh,
Really?
I don't think so. You've won, you've given them so much power, and
Mhm.
they think, I got you to come back. I can do anything now. And I think the emotional, the psychological manipulation that would ensue would just imagine that it would be next to impossible to get out again.
That's got to be so hard when you walk away and then they're like, I'll do all the things you want. I'll do this. I'll do that. It's going
Yes,
to be so much
yes.
better.
It's hard to say no to that. It's hard
Yeah.
to because you feel like you're rejecting them all over again. So then I had guilt about that. He's promised all this stuff and I knew I didn't want to go back. But
Mm.
I had some moments there where I felt obligated to go back. And it's just getting back into that whole victim of narcissistic abuse. That's what we do. We feel obligated.
Yeah.
And so I went through a period where I was feeling obligated. He was out there trying to do everything he could to convince me to come back. The interesting thing is, though, once he determined that I wasn't coming back, he went completely to the other extreme. So at that point, I realized I had made the right decision. He went from saying, I just love you so much, and I'm going to make your life so perfect, and all of this, to all the way over to draining the bank account so that I couldn't buy groceries. Literally
Wow.
wanted me to be homeless and have nothing.
Oh my
It's like,
goodness.
how do you say that you are so in love with somebody,
Mm.
and then 2 weeks later, you would actually like to see them homeless if possible. I don't see how you can you can't be in both of those places.
No. In those cases where somebody's maybe unsure and this person is trying to convince them to come back, is it best to wait it out and see if that behavior flips like that and then, or I don't.
If I think if you're dealing with somebody who actually has narcissistic personality disorder, my opinion would be there's no wait and see. It's just
Mm.
it's not going to go well and you need to get out.
Yeah,
It's
but I could
so
see
unhealthy.
I could see someone convincing themselves like, okay, this time I'm going to go back and he's going to be better and he's going to do the things he's saying he's doing, which I guess that's when you end up in the cycle of never
Yes.
leaving. But that's why
Right,
I'm wondering if
right.
it's okay, just if you can make him realize you're never coming back and then you see that switch flip, I don't know.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
you've been confirmed in your
Then you're
feelings.
confirmed. That's true. That's true. It's when they start to get hostile and when they start to get volatile. Then, wow, I do not want to go back.
Oh man, that's so hard though. I just can't even imagine that. Any abusive situation is just that's so hard to get out of for everybody.
It is. It really is. It's just that I think that whole people pleasing thing really becomes an issue. At least it was for me. You feel obligated. You don't want to hurt somebody. You don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. I feel bad about that.
Yeah.
So really having to deal with that guilt was was huge for me. That was really the hardest part of all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the him trying to cut me off financially and doing all these horrible things, but really the hardest part was just that guilt.
And I don't know. I think I would have the feelings too of what if this is finally, what if me leaving is the catalyst for him to turn his life around and be a better person? And then now you're gone and you're missing out on the better
Yeah,
person that you always wanted. Did those thoughts go through your head?
they didn't,
Okay.
because when I really started delving into narcissism and really starting to understand it and realize he was the textbook narcissist, I knew that there is no changing. He's not going to change. He can give the illusion of changing. And even today, he's acting like he's just this reformed, amazing human being. He's not. And I know that. Like I say, I have zero regrets about leaving and only wish I had done it sooner.
What about his family? Were you in contact with them or are they, I'm just curious
Yeah,
what their thoughts are on having a narcissistic son or brother or whatever.
both of his parents passed away
Okay.
before I left, before we had any of the divorce, any of that was
Hmm.
going on. But I like his sibling, he does have a sibling, and his sibling would not believe for a second that her brother is a narcissist.
Really?
They just want to deny. Yeah.
Is that person a narcissist too?
No, no, actually, she's not.
Okay.
But she
Okay.
just, I guess in her world, it's just easier to think that he's a great person. And so that's what she does. But no, she would not believe, I don't think, I don't know. But
Mm.
yeah, I would say most people that he's close to. And for example, after I left, one thing that all narcissists will do is they will launch what's called a smear campaign. And
Okay.
I was not prepared for that. And this fantasy world I was living in, I didn't think that he would ever do that. But he did. He went out to every person that we knew mutually and told this big sob story, and he's the victim and whatever. And basically, all those quote unquote friends we had when we were married, they have all gone to his side. None of these people speak to me anymore. And
Oh,
I don't know what he's told them, but who knows? But he's the victim. He's the victim, of course. And he's been able to convince everybody. And of course, these people only saw this wonderful side of him. So
yeah.
they would not believe for a second that he was abusive behind closed doors. So that's been hard to have to
Yeah.
realize that all these people have effectively turned on me and I didn't do anything. You have to let it go. That's been orders of magnitude harder than I thought it would be,
Mm.
to just accept that and just have to realize there's nothing I can do about it. He's out there telling his story and I can't stop him. So I just have to let it go and just say, I'm in such a better place now. I don't care.
It's so hard though, because I really wonder what he's telling people that you did, or is he making up
Yeah.
lies, I wonder?
Yeah, I
No.
think I don't know what he's saying. If I had to guess, he would say that, oh, she had a breakdown and she just left me. I didn't know. It was so unexpected. Probably anything to make him sound like he's such a victim and everyone should feel so sorry for him. He got discarded and this was so unfair. And like I say, he's convincing. So he's got a whole team of people that think that he was discarded and his wife walked out on him, and how horrible.
Mm. There had to have been some frustration there on your part on not being able to control some of that narrative, like that. Be
And
able
not
to
being
like
able to
tell your
defend myself.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I have no way of defending myself to those people. So, like I say, I just have to let it go.
But also in the same breath, being able to cut those ties too maybe helps in your healing and moving away from that chapter of your life because those were mutual friends you guys had then and
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think cutting ties, as harsh as it sounds, has been healing. Cutting ties with those mutual people, letting them just go to his side, I think really in the long run has been therapeutic for me because it helps me to move on and not have those same ties that he has.
yeah. Yeah, I'm reading the Let Them Theory book right now by Mel Robbins. Have you heard of
Oh,
that?
yeah, yes.
Yeah, and I'm in the relationship part at the end of the book and she was just talking about that you need zero contact after a breakup for at least 30 days, if not longer, with that person, because otherwise it's too easy to get pulled back into
Yes.
the relationship and the feelings and not be able to let go and stuff like that. I would say probably, depending on the situation, probably something like this, you need probably more than 30 days, but
Yeah, 30 days. I'm just thinking, I don't think so. I think it's got to be a lot longer than 30 days. But yeah, I think you and I have no contact with my ex-husband. We do share kids, but our kids are grown. So
okay.
that made it easy. We have zero contact and that feels good. That feels right.
Yeah.
And I don't think we will ever have contact again.
Yeah.
And I'm good with that. It's a chapter of my life that I have closed and happened and but that's not my future.
Do you have any advice for somebody who maybe is in your situation with young kids and having to be in contact with that person more in that regard? How do you, because I guess you just have to have really firm boundaries there and only talk about kids or
Yes,
that.
yes. That would be so difficult. I've heard that family court with a narcissist is a nightmare because they will go in and charm the judge. And I've heard of so many stories where the narcissist ends up getting custody of the kids. And
Really?
it's, yes, I've heard so many people say that's what happened to them. And it's just a terrible thing. But yeah, definitely strong boundaries and no need to discuss anything but the kids. And that's what, when I initially left, that's what, for the first year, I had some contact with my ex, but
Okay.
it was only about the kids. It was
Yeah.
only about things going on with the kids and the kids' lives and things that they needed. And so that I think is a good tip. Keep
Mhm.
the conversation about the kids. Anything beyond the kids is not on the table for discussion.
Yeah, that's so hard. I could see a narcissist based on the conversation that we've had here using that as a way to try to pop back in at
Oh,
some
yeah.
point because you can't just cut off communication because you have to talk about the kids. So, yeah.
That would be extremely difficult. And that was one thing that made my divorce a lot easier than a lot of other people going through the same situation, that our kids were grown and we didn't have to deal with custody and there was nothing pertaining to the kids. We didn't have minor children involved.
Yeah.
It did make a very complicated divorce a little less complicated, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what your relationship is with, or your kids' relationship is with your ex-husband, but if the kids keep that relationship as adults, presumably you're going to have events and things like that are going to overlap with that person. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so my kids both have a decent relationship with their dad, and it's hard. It's hard for me to sit and watch, but at the
Yeah.
same time, he's their father.
Yeah.
And so I can't discourage a relationship with him.
Yeah.
But they both know that what he is. They know he's a narcissist. They're very educated in this arena, and that's good. So
Yeah.
they're very aware. They can see when he's trying to manipulate. They're just very
Mm.
aware of it. But yeah, I have thought about that. Down the road, surely there'll be weddings and things,
Yeah.
graduations. We have college graduation coming up maybe in another year. Yeah, I'm already thinking about those things. And
Yeah.
I think that it's something that we could attend the same event and just not have any contact.
Mm.
I don't think
Yeah.
that even so there would be any contact.
Yeah, it's really hard. My parents got divorced when I was 18, 19. And yeah, those events of like weddings, even grandkids. My sister has two
Yeah,
kids, and so they've had to be at birthday parties for the kids together and some holidays and things like, not like big holidays, like we don't do all Christmas together or anything like
right.
that. And I know that's been really hard for my mom to get through sometimes. Now
Yeah.
it's been like 20 years, and so we're more past it than we used to be. But when you have kids with those people, you are probably always going to have some tie like that to them in the future.
Right. You're always going to have events throughout your life, like
Mm.
you say, birthday parties and things like that. So I don't know. I think we'll just cross that bridge when we come to it, but we have no contact, no communication, and that works for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're probably better off in that
Yes,
arena.
yes.
Man. So tell me about your book.
Yeah, so when I was doing all of this research about narcissism, I wanted to read everything I could find. And everything that was out there that I could see was either written by a therapist or psychologist.
Mm.
And it was good information, and I found out a lot about, just read a lot about it, but it was all academic. What I really wanted to find was an insider account, an insider point of view, and just
Yeah.
find out. I was more interested in day-to-day life. What does
Yeah.
that look like for other people? And I couldn't find it. And so after my divorce, I decided to write a memoir. I thought that might be helpful to people out there. And really what I try to do is just a chronological story from meeting my ex all the way through our divorce. And I really just try to show what that day to day life looks like, from just the small events to more dramatic events, just what that mundane day to day looks like living with a narcissist. And I hope that other people might read it and realize, wow, this sounds like my life, or this sounds like somebody
Mhm.
I know. So maybe it would raise some awareness
Yeah.
to other people out there.
So it's called Bride Maid.
Yes.
How did you come up with that title?
I had a friend help me, and I wanted to come up with something creative. I didn't want it to have narcissist in the title.
Yeah.
So I was just looking for something a little different. And that kind of hit me because I was a young bride when I got married, and I really was made into what he wanted. That was his goal throughout our marriage, is to kind of mold me and form me into this, his biggest cheerleader, his biggest fan. And so I feel like I was a bride and I was made into what he wanted.
I love that. It's such a unique title. So I was like, I was curious. I'm like, I gotta ask her
Yeah.
where this came from. So
Yes, yes, a lot of people do ask.
yeah. So you can find the book anywhere, or is there a specific place that you prefer?
Yeah, anywhere online that books are sold, it's available in paperback and ebook. And of course, it's on Amazon and also barnesandnoble.com, target.com, walmart.com,
Awesome.
basically anywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
the only thing is it's not in an audiobook
Okay.
format yet, and that might be coming this summer. We'll see.
Yeah. Did you find it really therapeutic to go through and write all that?
I did. It's interesting. When I was in therapy after I had left, but before my divorce was final, and my ex-husband was pulling out all the stops and trying to get me to come back. One thing my therapist told me to do was, she said, I think you need to take out a piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to write down every traumatic event that you can recall in the last 29 years of your marriage. And she
Mm.
said, and then when you start having those thoughts and think that maybe I should go back, I want you to take the list out and I want you to read it. And I
Yeah.
thought, that's interesting because I had never journaled and that was never something I had done. But I thought, I think I'm going to do that. So I
Yeah.
did. And I
Okay.
just went and made bullet points and just wrote out all these events. And then when I decided that I was going to write this memoir, I literally took that list out and I just told the story of each one of those events and put them in chronological order. So yeah, it really, it started out as a therapy exercise,
Yeah.
and I feel like it was very therapeutic. I didn't expect it to be, so I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, because sometimes revisiting those traumas can be very triggering and very hard to do. But I have talked to a lot of authors or people on this podcast that have written books about their stories, and they all say the same thing, that it was just super therapeutic for them to get through and write it all out. And I think it's also very important to remember those things, because I think that when you get out of those relationships, it's easy to forget that all of that happened and convince yourself that it wasn't as bad as it was.
Yeah, I think I could see myself doing that, thinking maybe it wasn't that bad. So really putting all of this down on paper, to me, it was very freeing. I
Yeah.
feel like I can let go of it. I don't have to hold on to these stories anymore
Mm.
because they're documented now. And because it is documented, I do feel like I won't find myself in that situation of saying, maybe it wasn't that bad. Because all I have to do is remember the writing process. And while I was writing, I was thinking to myself, this is a whole lot worse than I thought it was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. Like I say, you have to be on the outside and look back in before you can really get the scope of how bad something was. And
Mhm.
definitely, it was eye-opening for me. It was definitely worse. I'm writing this stuff and then I'm reading it back and thinking, why did I live this way?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
I
an
really hate the whole hindsight is 2020 thing. I know it's
yeah.
so true, but it's so frustrating, right? Because you look back, like you said, you would have gotten out so much sooner. And if only we could have a crystal ball to tell us so many things in life, right?
Yes, yes. It you get bogged down by thinking, gosh, I wasted so many years on this person. But again, there's just you can't do anything about that. You just have to take those experiences and try to make something good out of it. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, you can't change it now.
No,
But
no, you can't.
it's so infuriating to me because I have so many conversations on this podcast about, everybody's past stories. And everybody says the same thing. It's once you're out of it and healing from it is when you can finally look back on it. But in the moment, it's just so hard to recognize it.
It really is. And for a lot of victims, you just live in survival mode.
Yeah.
It's all about just making
Yeah.
it to the next day. Let me just make it to the next day and then tomorrow will be better. And we get in a rut thinking that
Yeah.
and it's not a healthy way to think.
Yeah. So what do you think is next for you? You wrote the book, you're doing all of your healing, but you're still pretty fresh out of this relationship and doing all this research on narcissism. Do you think you'll start doing any like coaching or anything like that? What do you think the future's going to hold for you?
I'm not sure. Coaching seems interesting to me. I would be willing to look into that. I just really don't have a lot of plans. I'm just taking it day to day and finding this freedom. This freedom is it's so cool. So I'm really enjoying that and I'm having a good time promoting my book and getting to meet readers and just meet people and it's been very rewarding. But as far as what's next, I don't really know.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we'll see, huh? Just get it out and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah.
Mia, do you have any final parting words for my listeners?
Yeah, I think I would like to leave listeners with the idea that if you're in an abusive relationship, specifically narcissism, don't wait. Don't think that if you hold on a little bit longer, if you can do a little bit better, things will get better. They really won't. And I would just encourage anyone, as daunting as leaving, separation, divorce, as daunting as that may seem, you can do it.
Mm.
It is possible. And just don't ever feel like you're stuck because you're never stuck. You always have options.
I love that. We will link all the ways to get a hold of you in the show notes and your book. So if anybody out there is listening and wants to read your book or get a hold of you, if they maybe think that they're in a narcissistic relationship, would you be open to people reaching out and maybe asking questions?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I have a website and there's a contact on my website and absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mia, for this conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I feel like I've learned a lot too. So I hope everybody listening has too.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, Mia.